I'm really looking forward to it.
What's going on today, Pete?
Well,
Just a rundown.
we're doing the Green Book study. It's going to be a philosophy jam session with Steve Tullius, Andy Roberts, and myself, all coordinated with Lacey Book. Yesterday, some people were saying that was one of the most favorite parts of the entire Berkshire program. Irene actually was saying, I wish that could have lasted 8 hours instead of 45 minutes. So
she came up to me and said the same exact thing. She loved the Green Book study. She loved the energy, the excitement. She said it was not boring. It was the best one that she saw in a while.
Well, you know what was interesting is all three of us have a real good understanding of chiropractic philosophy.
Right.
But yet there's so much that needs to be explored, so much that we can understand from slightly different vantage points to allow people to carve out in their own mind how they want to engage in that philosophy and express it within their practices and within their lives. So,
and then it didn't hurt having the beautiful, lovely Lacey Book.
Who?
Dr. Lacey Book.
Oh, Lacey's amazing.
And I heard she came up with a great format to keep you guys organized. And
yeah,
in control.
3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
She has the
2
timer.
minutes. That was it. 2 minutes.
2 minutes, 1 minute follow up.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's great.
Quick. And guests at home were doing their job, sending in great questions.
Actually, we have some great questions coming up today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It'll be good.
So you guys at home,
challenge. Yeah.
Yep. You guys at home, get some good questions going, and we'll see if we can turn those ones in as well.
Great. Okay.
All right.
Get ready.
Yep. We got 2 minutes to go. Hey, we got another rock star, Vice President of IFCO, Dr. Steve Tullius, here for the Green Book study. Steve, what's going on today?
Well, we're having the Green Book study. We're going to be answering some questions that people brought to us yesterday, and any other questions that may come up. So, yesterday's session was fantastic. Looking forward to sharing and participating in this today.
Awesome. And how late did you stay out last night?
You know,
good morning. Hey, good morning.
I think midnight.
Oh, okay.
But, the Garbers hosted a fantastic party
that we all stayed up way too late at. Yes, but we're here. We made it. We're live.
Jack's alive.
President Dr. Jack Burla. He's still here.
Shabbat shalom.
Jack.
Yes.
How'd you like the Green Book studies yesterday?
I found them extremely enlightening. I think that it's interesting to see that we can have three very accomplished people with three different ideas about how they're going. So you can imagine how important it is that people should get together and really talk this out. You can't do a Green Book study alone.
Right.
You have to have something that you can bounce ideas off, interpretations, and it's really, there's nothing to be interpreted. It is what it is. But we take our personal experiences and our personal biases into it, and what we need to do is look at them as being pure.
The guests at home already have questions going on. Peter Lawrence is in the house.
Hey, Peter.
We have Norway in the house. Lori is asking some questions. We'll get them written down. Stuart Humberg asking some mental impulse question. We'll get that on there. Johnny Collar is on. There's so many people watching. So we're doing really good with all that. Thanks, everybody, for watching the show, tuning in. I know it's different hours at different parts of the world, but you guys are all here, and we're getting ready to rock and roll in 1 minute.
Excellent. Great morning session.
Dr. Andy Roberts from TATS, back there in the background. Nice. Hello, Doc. Okay.
I did want to encourage people that if they found the Green Book study of interest yesterday, I'm sure they will again today, they really should buy their own copies of Stevenson's. Yeah. And you can do that on dscbooks.com. It's Delta Sigma Chi Books.com. And they'll make sure they ship it to you right away. Get in there, make sure you read it several times, and then get a group together and really begin to dissect it, to own it. And once you do, you'll find that your practice will just explode.
The one big question that we're all asking in the chat box is, where in the world is Liam Schubel?
Liam is probably still sleeping.
Yes, he missed his appointment right now.
Oh no.
But no worry, guys. We got rock stars here. We got some great music going, guys. I'm going to turn it up and let everybody take it over from here. I'm going to watch your chat box, and I'll ask those questions when you bring them. Hey, in the background, there's the man of the hour, Scott Garber. We're ready.
Good morning. Is everybody awake this morning?
Woo!
Is everybody awake this morning?
Yes.
Peter's awake. Did you guys enjoy yesterday? Awesome. We had a great time yesterday. We got a lot of good feedback and some amazing questions prepared for you today.
Relative to the body, it was looked at as a physical and a chemical machine that things would happen to it and you would fix it if it broke like a machine. So mechanism really looked at the body as a mechanical phenomena, where vitalism looked at spiritualism looked at everything as spirit. Vitalism is really coming together of mechanism and spiritualism. Spiritualism looked at things as being purely under the control of a deity, that there was some energy of force or God or spirit that allowed life to happen or express. And both of those viewpoints still exist today. I mean, there are people who view that the body is a machine, that they bend over and their back goes out on them and they go to a chiropractor to put it back in. That a germ, bacteria, virus enters the body and you can do something mechanical to treat that thing that made the body sick. People also view the body very often from a spiritualistic perspective. You know, why is God smiting me with this? They view that there's this deity that controls their life experience. Vitalism was really a coming together of those perspectives, that there is a physical machine that we have, but that there's a ghost inside that machine, that there's this a spirit, if you want to call it, this force that holds that physical machine together. So in that sense, that was vitalism. Chiropractic is a vitalistic philosophy, but it's not vitalism. Vitalism is a bigger construct of that. It's like the conversation yesterday, is God universal intelligence? No, chiropractic isn't vitalism, but it is a vitalistic philosophy.
I think Peter's going to give Andy a run for his money today on this 2-minute marker. Andy, you covered it? You're good? Okay, that didn't make Andy squirm enough, so we're going to move into a bigger question. He has nothing to say. This is a surprise. Are you guys surprised that Andy Roberts has nothing to say?
Wait
a minute. Should we revisit this? Andy, are you sure?
I'll add one thing.
He has one thing.
Wait. You can't add up minutes. You can't take these 2 minutes.
You can't have 2 minutes. You get 1 minute, Andy. You lost your privilege.
BJ Palmer was asked once, is chiropractic vitalistic?
Mike.
Hi. BJ Palmer was asked once, is chiropractic vitalistic or mechanistic? And his answer was, yes.
Fair enough. All right. Next question. This is actually a question from IFCO-TV yesterday from Stuart. What objective evidence do we have of the mental impulse, or does it remain solely in the philosophical domain? This is meant to make Andy squirm. Who's starting off, Steve?
The mental impulse is a metaphysical concept of intelligence, of information. It's not information in terms of a nerve impulse, but it's the idea. It's that intelligence behind the machine, as Peter was talking about. And so far, with that definition, we don't have anything that can measure it that I know of. Maybe my colleagues can answer differently, but we're talking about intelligence, and at this point, we're measuring the manifestations of intelligence. So, which is a great way to do that. So maybe Peter has something else to add to that. Actually, I'm sure he does.
So back in the day, Dr. B.J. Palmer had built for himself the electroencephalograph and tympograph, which he had thought was a machine that was able to empirically measure mental impulse. And he actually stuck with that for his entire lifetime. In retrospect, we're probably looking at the very early origins of an EEG type machine. As Dr. Tullius said, it's both a physical and an abstract, both concrete and both abstract. And there is, at this moment in time in the technology, no way to empirically satisfy according to certain guidelines and standards. But as we mentioned yesterday, the same thing goes for the electron, same thing goes for the photon. These are constructs that we use to describe a phenomena, and we are not able to empirically smell, taste, touch, to be able to measure those, but we can measure its manifestation, its expression. And ultimately, that's the most important thing. So as far as the research goes, and then you could bring in the studies that say the response in the body is actually faster than the fastest measured action potential. So there are things outside of that. Can't necessarily make a direct tie, but there are many things that point to the existence of something of which we in chiropractic would call the mental impulse within our construct.
Really quickly, Andy, isn't there 2 of those machines left and we can't figure out how to use them? So how do we know that BJ wasn't measuring that?
Well, yeah. So the big one that's always on the pictures, the big old one, that's the one at Palmer. There was a second one supposedly built that was found in a university in Iowa called the Maharishi University that was then sent to Sherman, and it was in a closet that one of the students at the time found, dusted off, had some experience with electronics, fiddled with it, and got it working. It's now sitting in the Sherman Dr. John Hart's museum and archives. It's a pretty neat piece of history. I've seen the output from the original. I've talked with Dr. Bud Crowder, who was an operator of one of them. And it made sense to those that passed through it, but until we're able to definitively or empirically, if we're able to define the construct of the mental impulse, there's no way we can know if it did measure it or not.
Good. Thank you.
So what is a mental impulse? And how's a mental impulse different than a nerve impulse? So I guess until we can clearly define what the hell a mental impulse is, I don't think that we're going to be able to quantify it. So I'm going to give you perspective. The difference between a nerve impulse and a mental impulse is that the mental impulse has encapsulated within it the bit of holographic understanding, appreciation of what that nerve impulse is doing. That it's more than just an electrochemical response between the brain and the body that's there. That behind the mental impulse is an understanding of the entire physiology, and that physiology as it relates to its environment, and that physiology as it relates to all of its life experiences, and that the expression of that intelligence through the nerve, through that nerve impulse, encapsulates within it a degree of intelligence and understanding of a much bigger construct. So it's a real melding together of our clinical service with a philosophical ideal. And I think it was brilliant that our forefathers and foremothers of our profession actually created a term that encapsulated within the definition of our clinical service the location correction vertebral subluxation to allow better expression of the mental impulse. That encapsulated within that was a philosophical ideal. So it was absolutely brilliant that was there. But to be able to measure a mental impulse would be like trying to measure love. You know, when I go to a person and I say, I love you, the impression of those sounds and that resonance onto the being is much greater than just the sound, much more than the definition of those words. So to try to measure a mental impulse, you can look at manifestations of it, but you're never going to be able to quantify what a mental impulse is, because locked within there is the genius and the miracle that holds life together, that holds this universe together.
Andy tried to take the mic starting at 1 minute, so.
I love you, Peter.
No, behind that is, I don't agree with you.
But.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree with Pete. I just use a different language, and I just wanted to clarify a point. You know, that fine line between an action potential, let's say, and the mental impulse. An action potential is when you take a frog, cut its leg off, hook it up to a battery, and it kicks, right? But that same frog leg that you have cut off and you have hooked up to the battery and it's getting the juice, if you cut its skin, what's it not going to do?
Heal.
If you have a heart hooked up outside of the body, it's going to still beat, right? It's going to still beat. But if I put a load on it as if it was climbing stairs, what's that beat going to do? Not change at all. So what we're talking about is the action potential is, if we're, from the first question, if we're looking at it in the machine, the mechanistic view, it's the mechanism, right? But the mental impulse is purposeful. It's purposeful. It is constructed for one moment in time, for one reason only, and that's to get the information to that tissue cell for it to do what? What matter was designed for, and that is to express force, function.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that? Very good, thanks. We had a question that came up last night, and multiple people were asking. They want to know, where does Innate reside?
In living matter.
That's a great question. The B.J. Palmer and in Stevenson's, they talk about it residing in the brain, that's the center. However, they even said that it's not, it's really not even there, just there. It's everywhere. And Dr. Joseph Strauss has talked recently about it, being even cellular intelligence, and that it's throughout the body. And in my opinion, it's throughout the body. Where could it not be?
They called that the seat of innate, right? So does it reside in the cell?
So, depending on the view of the constructs that we use, if we follow the chiropractic principles and we look at what the function of innate intelligence is, what the mission of innate intelligence is, it begins to pose some hiccups into where that is. And I think we always get hooked up or connected with or boxed in to maybe a certain word. Just because we're talking about innate intelligence doesn't necessarily mean that there are not other types of intelligence. So if the purpose of innate intelligence is to do what? What's its purpose? Adapt to universal forces. I mean, that's what it's for. To what? Create what? Mental impulse. But then if we look at it in the real world and we think of it logically, would we need the brain? If innate intelligence, as that construct, resides in the tissue cell and can create its own mental impulse? And then we begin to go down these rabbit holes, and we begin to have problems with that construct. Now, does that mean that a cell can't have an intelligence? The molecule not present an intelligence? We know so on that level, universal. But can the cell itself not have an intelligence? I take a cheek cell, and I take it out, and I put it in a petri dish and give it enough food and medium. What's it going to do? It's going to grow. It's going to divide unchecked. Is it going to grow another cheek? No. But that same cell that was here subjugated itself for the greater good of the entire organism. So when we look at those things, again, we say, well, it doesn't make sense that universal innate intelligence resides there. Can it have an intelligence? Of course it has an intelligence, a cellular intelligence. Then a tissue has a tissue intelligence, an organ has an... But on a whole, when we look at it, when we talk about it in our chiropractic context, innate intelligence is about coordinating and regulating the whole being.
The goal of innate intelligence is to hold matter in its own integrity, to keep that bit of matter unique, dissimilar from the rest of the world around it. Assemble forces in a constructive way. So whether that lives in a cell, in a plant, in any living form, in a human being, innate intelligence is that force that assembles universal forces in such a way to be constructive, to allow that bit of matter to be adapting, to expand and contract, to show all the signs of life. Inside of a human being, that intelligence that resides in every cell and organ tissue of living matter in the body is coordinated through the brain and the nervous system. Another level of vibration of that innate intelligence that expresses itself through functional integrity of the entire physiology. Innate intelligence doesn't live in a location. It's not like a piece of matter. It's intelligence. It's a construct that basically we witness its expression of the forces that it generates as it expresses within living matter.
Yeah, I would just add that I view it as a field. We're talking about vitalism, we're talking about mechanism. We keep going back and forth between these two concepts within our own minds, and so, like as Peter said, I don't see it as a thing. It's an awareness, and the location. I don't think we really need to have to say where it resides.
Very nice. Okay, somebody needs to take this on. We have a question from IFCO-TV. Peter Lawrence wants to know, can you explain the normal complete cycle? Do you need more than 2 minutes for this one?
No.
Liar.
I was literally
Liar.
just in Amsterdam doing for the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophy program. By the way, I was in the back of the room yesterday, and I don't even know if everyone was in here at the time, but I counted 13 graduates of the ACP program here in this room. It's pretty awesome. And that's a great program. I'm actually going to take a moment of my time to plug it. Dr. Bill Decken and Sherman College of Chiropractic have developed a super great, important, wonderful program that allows you not only to learn the traditional chiropractic, but is open enough to allow you to explore things that, like Peter says, up here. It's really an incredible program. You work towards writing a thesis. And there are great mentors in this room. Judy's one of the mentors that helps the students through. It's really, Jaime is one of the mentors that helps students through, and he's the one that actually, in Europe, have organized the last few, and he's done an amazing job. This last class is amazing. Bill tasked me with presenting the normal complete cycle, and he said, oh, how many hours do you need? I said, well, how many weekends do we have? And the normal complete cycle is literally why the Stevenson's textbook exists. It is the explanation of the normal complete cycle, because that is the construct by which we understand our philosophy and our interface between that intelligence and this matter. So really what it's talking about is a one single moment in time of how the brain views the body, relates it to the environment, creates one packet of information, which is ultimately the mental impulse, for one moment in time, for one tissue cell to perform its proper function. And then the backside of that is the response of that tissue cell, what it's doing, how it's performing. Is it right or wrong, so to speak? Is it doing what it's charged to do? And then the brain cell receiving that innate intelligence, formulating that all together, not only from that tissue cell, but all of the tissue cells around it and its environment, to through ideation, to create then the next intellectual adaptation, that purely mental aspect of what that cell needs in relation with all the other cells, all the other tissues, all the organs at every moment in time. It is the basis of life and how we exist. It is one of the most beautiful things, and I think we skip over it most of the time when we're reading through it.
That was awesome.
Again, we keep coming back to vitalism and mechanism, and the normal complete cycle is the blending of our vitalistic philosophy with the mechanics and explaining it in this beautiful way that tells the story. You know, and this is an important piece to really grasp to understand chiropractic. And in one word, it describes subluxation and disconnection and what happens as a result.
Do you guys have any suggestions of what people should do to study that besides 14? Just 14. Just volume 14. That's a suggestion.
If you can get to volume 14, most people have never read it.
Right.
Most chiropractors, even straight chiropractors, have never read Stevenson's textbook.
The funny thing is, almost every chiropractor uses a simple cycle. The simple cycle is the normal complete cycle with all the words taken away. So if you want to understand what you're presenting to your patients, and I'm not saying you sit across at a doctor's report and say, you know, Mary, step 7, the mental impulse. No, but by understanding every step, you have a better command of what you're doing. You have a better command of what's going on with them, and you have a better ability to communicate that message done in the right language.
Okay, so I have a couple questions left, but does the audience here have any questions? Anyone have a question? Simon wants to know, how many steps are there in the normal complete cycle? 31.
So Simon mention Volume 5. Volume 5 is a book written by Craven / Palmer. It's a lot of talks by BJ. Craven put it together. I mentioned Craven, I think, yesterday in the context of having been a minister and that connection with that theologic side. So the mastery of Stevenson was his ability to order things, to put it in a logical sense and order, to redact everything that was out there. Because those of you that have actually read a green book written by BJ, it's like, Craven was no different, and it was beautiful. By the way, I much prefer Craven's drawing of the normal complete cycle, which was like 4 circles with 3 lines over it, and that was it. It was a much simpler diagram. But in there has almost every step of the normal complete cycle, and beautifully explained by Craven. 1920. Of course.
Craven helped the second edition, but BJ actually wrote the book in 1909, and it almost 3 pages that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Can you clarify that for IFCO-TV?
Thank you.
Repeat it.
Review what Simon
The
said,
first
please.
edition of Volume 5 was 1909, and then the second edition was 1920. The first one was wholly written by BJ, and then the other one was the collaboration of BJ and Craven, who is his chair of philosophy.
Correct me if I'm going to correct me if I don't get the question correct. So Aaron asked, seeing that the mental impulse and the innate intelligence are not quantifiable and there's no seat, no location for it, is it possible to have a healthcare profession based upon that? Is that? So, and Aaron also stated, that this concept almost creates this isolation within healthcare. How do we have a conversation with a medical doctor about what we're actually doing? Correct? Okay, so I would say, what healthcare profession is not using this as their basis? What healthcare profession isn't? They may or may not recognize it and talk about it openly. However, this is how things work, and when having a conversation with the medical doctor, I don't jump into universal intelligence and innate intelligence. I'm speaking more language of a mechanism initially, and then bringing people, and this is no different with any practice member within our offices. In order to communicate we need to care enough to communicate within those people's value systems. That's something I learned from Dr. John DeMartini years ago, is that we need to communicate with people where they're at, care enough to understand what their belief systems are, where they're at, and then bring them along on a journey that allows them to discover these concepts for themselves. And actually, what I believe is reconnect them to an awareness that they already have. The majority of the world has a vitalistic belief system. 85% of the world believes in a higher power. And while we are not, again, saying that chiropractic believes universal intelligence is God, if the majority of the world does believe that there is a higher power, they automatically have a vitalistic philosophy. And it's just a matter of reconnecting them with that and allowing them to see that their choices are actually in contradiction to their vitalistic belief systems, letting them come to that conclusion versus us, again, in an outside-in manner, telling them because people don't learn that way.
Really quickly, IFCO-TV wants to know if Simon can have a mic. Next year, Simon, yeah. Andy? Oh, we have another. Let me take this over there. So, all right. Question from the audience.
Would it be incorrect to use words like frequency or vibration to help explain mental impulse?
I think Andy wants that one. I saw that hand.
So the answer is yes, no.
Maybe.
They're, again, being abstract, we have to put it in terms that we can understand. I mean, we could even take this even to another whole conversational dilemma and say there is no line between universal and innate. If innate is universal, then, I mean, where's the parameter? Does it stop at the dermis, you know, at the surface of my skin? Or is it more like maybe Peter described, and it's an entire field, and that piece of matter, that this flow, so to speak, of universal intelligence passes through, animates it. But it's not maybe static, and it's in continual motion. If we look at it from a physics standpoint, everything is frequency, right? You look at the Kelvin scale. I mean, everything's from 0 to up, 0 being complete no motion whatsoever in molecules. So everything has frequency. So yeah, we can put it into any terms, but I think we have to be super careful when we use that as definitive language, and then try to ascribe something like we're doing, like, okay, so now I take tuning forks and I put it on the atlas. It has to be 512 megahertz. So, you know, I think that's where we begin to get into problems.
So I think that I'm totally going to agree with what Andy just said. I think the terminology can be utilized. Typically, we look at higher vibrations being more complex structures, that the vibration of a human organism is different than the vibration of a plant. Okay, yet how do you define that? In other words, how do you really look at the whole vibrational characteristic of the being? So yes, the simple answer is yes, and we could engage into a long conversation on what we would do with that.
Steve, wait.
But then again, in the same comment,
Steve doesn't even get a chance with Andy on this side.
higher vibration, and if we use the example of water, higher vibration is more chaotic.
I have nothing to add to that. Next question.
Let me bring this on back. Go, Dave, go.
Distinguished colleagues, we understand at this point that we are corporeal beings, corporeal physical beings with layers of energy outside of us. We have focused energy fields, chakras they call them, that can be measured. There's an etheric field that I think they use Kirlian photography to measure, and then there's quartz bioenergy fields, and then unified fields of energy. So my question is, and Gerber talks about focused energy fields, chakras, as being antenna, bringing in energy from the outside. So Peter was mentioning the fact that if I say I love you, will that have an effect on our physiology? The evidence says that it will, because if my chakras, according to Gerber, are open, I'll take that intention and have it work on me. So my question is, Peter, I think, touched on it yesterday, that we have an innate, and if I say I love you, that innate is going to generate a universal force and intelligence that will work with Peter. So now that we have this kind of scientific evaluation of energy that is separate and distinct from neurologic, how does that change what we construct as innate? Does innate just stop with the corporeal body? Is a chakra innate, or is that universal? So how do you guys perceive the fact that there are energy fields that connect us? I mean, Einstein proved this with unified fields, 150 years ago. How does that relate to what we embrace in chiropractic philosophy?
We're going to give this to Peter.
It's all going to be based on perception. As Andy was just saying, where do we make that delineation between where innate intelligence expresses and universal intelligence expresses? Innate intelligence, as we define it, is that aspect of intelligence that allows matter to be adaptive, to hold in its own integrity of maintaining itself unique from the environment. It's there. In that space, innate intelligence doesn't go from one place to another. There is no defining line. Innate intelligence is a defined term that explains living matter, living tissue. So if I throw a baseball at you, okay, the innate intelligence within my body allows my musculature to work in such a way to throw a baseball. As that baseball moves, it's all universal forces that are there. When that baseball hits your body, okay, that universal force is recognized by your body, by the matter of your body, and your innate intelligence guides and controls the matter of your body in such a way to take that universal force and adapt it, or potentially subluxate you, or potentially do whatever is supposed to happen when that baseball hits you. Okay? The same thing is going to happen when I throw the words "I love you" at you. Okay? That's going to be perceived by the matter of your body, and it's a force that's come at you. How your body assembles that energy of vibration as it comes into the sounds of your ears, receives interpretation, and lands within the tissue of your body is based upon what's supposed to happen. Okay? So innate intelligence it doesn't flow, it doesn't go from one place to another. It is what assembles forces in such a way in living tissue. I think sometimes we tend to make it more complex. He wants to come after me, I can tell.
I know.
You had your chance.
He's warming you up by rubbing your back, making sure he's going to feel okay. No, wait. Hey, but no, you know what? I got to intervene just a little bit and give Steve a chance here. Steve, go ahead.
I think this comes back to yesterday, okay, and also with today. This kind of we're talking about if there's these fields, right? And I agree that they do exist. What are those fields? Are those fields information? Or are those fields physical? I mean, we tend to, just because we can't touch it, we tend to say it's not physical. However, it's having a physiological effect on people. So I think it comes back to our objective. Every philosophy, every profession, for it to be meaningful, it has to have a mission and objective. And we know, and this goes back to what Peter said yesterday, that when someone is subluxated, it interferes with the expression of life. And that includes every aspect of that expression. So, I don't know how the information you're sharing really changes what we do or our objective. Our objective remains the same. Maybe you're asking in terms of, do we change our techniques? I'm not really sure where the question was going in terms of, it doesn't change our philosophy. Our philosophy encompasses what you just described.
Andy?
Hey, Doc, do you agree with what Peter said? Because I completely agree with what Peter said. But here's the beautiful thing. If you agree with what Peter said, then saying I love you really would be no different than saying I hate you. Because it's still a universal force. It's no different. So we get into this whole thing about, love and intention. But if it's viewed, as Peter explained, as a universal force, then it really doesn't matter what those words are. It only matters on how your body adapts them. And maybe there's no different with how your body adapts I love you to I hate you. So, don't even try. So now, at that point, that would be a logical standpoint. Now you can argue that in the lovey-lovey world that you want to live in and construct for yourself, but on a purely chiropractic basis, on the philosophy that we have, and view it as a universal force, those words that you use are not necessarily important. It's only important how your matter is able to adapt it from innate intelligence.
I think Peter was squirming for the first time today.
Well, I have to, because there is a difference between love and hate. Okay, there is a difference in the vibrational characteristic of those words. But they're going to make a fundamental assumption, okay? And I think most people in this room are going to hang with this assumption that everything that manifests in our universe ultimately was created through the force and the power of love. If you're not willing to accept that premise, then what I'm about to say is bullshit. But where I believe most people, most beings on this planet recognize that love is a source of all creation, that there is a force and a power that love can make upon the world and upon humans and upon living forms and non-living forms. When the intention behind that action, those words come out of pure space of love. Because that's the source of creation and the recognition by all life form and all inanimate form in that space is different than anything else.
So body language, we can all tell him we hate him all weekend, and he's still going to feel real
Totally,
good.
you'll charge me up. That'll energize my formation of innate forces. But that's your construct. That's your theological construct of which is the source of love.
But I believe that most people resonate with that.
Maybe they resonate with that, but we have to be able to talk on a philosophical level on what we're actually saying. The word itself is just a conglomeration of vibrations that you put through your voice, as is hate, as in any other word. So don't use hate, use chair. I chair you. It's the same thing. Now, perhaps there's an energy behind it that also goes along with it, but that's much like the mental impulse, right? Because the mental impulse is both concrete and abstract. There's a carrier, an energy, a carrier wave, so to speak, with that packet of information. But ultimately, it's still, whatever you're receiving, it's still a universal force. It's still a trip on a sidewalk. It's still a cup of coffee, a cigarette. It's still a universal force that your body needs to adapt to.
So we have a couple minutes. Is this a follow-up to this? Get us back on track?
I love what you say, by the way.
Peter.
Peter. And I agree with Andy. Getting back to vibration, because we mentioned that and then we went off the subject. I'm just curious, if you ascribe to the quantum theory of existence and the string theory, I'd like to know where it would come into your philosophy in the construct of innate and universal intelligence.
Who wants it?
Every theory is a perspective. It's how we want to engage in the window that we want to utilize, as is every technique. Every technical system holds a different spinal model. Every philosophy holds a different set of value constructs that are there. So how does the string theory or unified field theory exist relative to chiropractic philosophy? Chiropractic philosophy is our fundamental understanding that the universe is organized, expresses itself within matter, and that there is this nervous system that coordinates and controls the function of the body. The innate wisdom utilizes to generate mental impulses to the expression of life within matter in complex beings, and that interference can occur in the spine that we call a subluxation. So that's a fundamental essence of where we are. How is that connected to the unified string theory? Any way you want it to be. Okay. The unified field theories recognize that there are unified fields in this world that assemble forces in such a way that we can step back from our existence in the world and get this philosophical ideal of how there is a connectedness that's there. In that space, on subluxate people, you allow the field to become stronger. You allow that field that we generate as human beings to be better. That we create a collectiveness of healing and health within the planet. So I think it can take our philosophy and take it to another frame. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry. Well, we're out of time, so let's do it over a beer.
All right, guys, we are out of time. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you, Lacey. Thank you, everybody.